So for this stone, I wanted to do something a bit more Christmassy because it felt like I should be getting into the season. So I've painted the stone this lovely gold colour, as you can see, and then I started adding some guidelines. My compass kept slipping on this, so they're a little bit messy, but it's not too bad. I can see where I'm supposed to be putting them. So I've just done a random selection of circle guidelines coming out from the centre circle. And then using my stencil, I'll just apply some lines straight over, just so I've got some rough guidance of where the halfway, quarter and eighth ways round the stone are when I start marking the stone up with paint. So like I said, I wanted to do some Christmas colours. So I've started the centre dot with this gorgeous Christmas green colour. So I've placed my initial dot, building up extras as I go, just so I can get a really nice puffy centre dot. Then moving out, the next row is this different shade of green. I'll be using a couple of different shades of green on this stone, and I'm marking out the halfway, the quarters and the eighths with this my white tool, which is a 2mm tool head on the end of that one, and then marking in between, just filling in the spaces. And now I'm moving on to my next Christmassy colour, so picking this gorgeous red, and then I'm using my tool just to mark a dot, and then using the same tool as I did in that first row, so the 2mm white tool that I have, and then using my scribe, just bringing that dot down slightly to a little point and swiping it through halfway down the dot of that first row. What I was trying to achieve here is like a central focus for this stone, so I just wanted lots of greens and a bit of red just to give it that Christmassy feel. So there we go, just finishing off that second row of dots, one more dot to go, and then swiping that through. And then I'm going to just repeat that pattern for this next row of my third shade of green. So just using a slightly larger tool at this point, so I'm now using my blue tool, which is a 2.5mm ball on the end, adding the dots and then swiping those through to the middle of the red row on that second row that we've just discussed. Moving on to the fourth row of dots, now using the same tool as the previous row, so my blue, which is 2.5mm, just adding a circle of dots around. I'm not going to be swiping these at all, they will just be dots. And filling these in using the other end of the blue tool, which all of my tools have a 1.5mm ball on the other end, and filling in from the blue 2.5mm circles and dots that we've added, just to finish off that circle and finish off that centerpiece of the stone. So now what I wanted to do is I wanted to build out from that center. We have that center focus of all the dots and those mini little swipes, and it makes a really nice radius. And now I want to work out from there. So I decided to use one of my acrylic rods. And so this one is my 10mm acrylic rod, and just creating a nice large green circle that then I can build out around. And at this point I wasn't quite sure whether I was going to do dots, walking the dots, or how I was going to fill out the design. But at this point I knew I didn't want the peaks that were showing on this, so I'm just going to fill out the dots slightly here with a bit extra paint and smooth them out so I get a nice rounded puffy dot. And then I decided I wasn't going to do walking the dots, I wanted to do a bit of swipes down on these to sort of mirror the kind of effect that we had in that centre circle focal piece that we did earlier. So using the blue tool again, so using the 2.5mm ball, I created a dot, a little bit proud of the green dots but not too far, because I wanted to have another focus around that centre dot, and placed the centre dot down, and then using my narrow tool, my yellow one, which is a 1mm tool, and then I dragged the dot forwards into the swipe. And continuing with the Christmas theme colours, getting one of the shades of green, which is my kind of turquoisey green, using the same tool, so the same size dot, and swiping that down as well to fill in the gap between the larger green 10mm dot. And then what I enjoy about these is I do just work out these designs as I go, as I create the stone. So then I thought, how can I do this? And I liked the bringing it out further rather than making another row of circle of dots. So what I wanted to do is trying to create a kind of little spike, but also incorporate the swipes that we have done on the previous couple of rows. So using my 8mm rod, I believe it was, I used the turquoisey green again and just added this extra dot out from the dark green, and then jumping in there with the next one down, which would be the 6mm rod, using the green colour, and then finishing that off with these swipes using the red, and I'm using my blue tool here again, which is the 2.5mm tool. So doing a dot to finish off the spikes and then swiping that down either side to bring together that previous row of design with this extra row coming in now. And I was really liking the swipes at this point. I just like the effect. And so rather than this being a dotting, walk the dot stone down and making lots of kind of petals, I like the spiky effects and the swipes that we were getting here. So then working out through the different shades of the green I've got and alternating whether the swipes come from the top of these spikes or the bottom of these spikes going to the top, pairing it off either side with a swipe up. And that's with the dark shade of green, and then going in with the turquoisey shade, adding another dot on top of the spike, but then bringing the swipes down either side of what we have done already previously. And I do these by making a little dot at the top. There you can see, add the dot, and then using your tool, and my hand's over the screen there a little bit, so that doesn't help, but you can see me dragging the tool around, pulling the paint as I go to where I want it to be. So dragging it down, and as you drag it down, the paint diminishes, and therefore you end up with that kind of swipe feature. So it's thicker at the top, which comes to a more of a point and a crescent at the bottom. So there's my last swipe of this light green going in there, filling in the gaps a bit as I go. And then what I want to do is want to add a little bit of depth. I found these single dots here quite one-dimensional, so I was using a different shade of green and top dotting those. And then my thoughts moved on to what can I do around the edge. I'm not sure struggle's the right word, but sometimes I have a bit of a mind blank, a creative blank of what to do around the edges of the stones. I could keep going on these stones, I just enjoy it so much, but I was thinking I'll keep the swipe going, and I wanted to replicate the red swipes coming out from that first row of swipes between the green dots, the larger green dots. So I'm using my 8mm acrylic rod, making a red dot, and then using my scribe to drag these down into a large triangle, so effectively a larger version of what we did on that previous row of swipes. And again the same, so moving to the green colour, so this nice dark Christmassy green, adding the pairs either side of the red swipes there. So like I said, you just add your dot, and then using your scribe, you just pull that through, or in this instance I didn't need my scribe, I was just using a smaller version of my tool, so using my yellow 1mm tool, just pulling that through to a point as to where I want it, and making sure that the paints don't touch. And then using the smaller acrylic dots again, so those ones would be my 5 or 4mm dots, just trying to close off the pattern along the edge, and then using a bit more green, finishing off those 3 dots on the side with this lighter, like pea kind of coloured green. And then to finish off these dots in the middle, I wanted to go top dot them again, because you can't quite see the 2 different shades of dots on here, so I thought I'd wanted to lift them once more. Once that paint had dried, they sort of merged into one. And then using the turquoisey green, just using that in the centre dot there, final piece to finish off the stone, and just to lift those green dots that little bit more. And this red or green has really got me in the Christmassy mood, so look out for more Christmassy themed stones.